UCF's basketball season is officially over, but have the Knights done enough to make the big dance?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day and for making Locked On the #1 podcast network out there. Turn us on, turn us up. We'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend, Kyle Nash, to talk a little UCF basketball here to get your weekend started. Kyle, on today's show, we're going to do a season in review, talk a little bit about what the season has been, and the ups and downs of this season, some big marquee wins here. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk a little bit about whether UCF has done enough to make this tournament. Selection Sunday is fast approaching. And then in the last segment, we're going to dive into the job that Johnny Dawkins has done and whether that's enough for him to remain UCF's head basketball coach. Let's start at the top here. Season in review, man. 20 win. It was a 20-win season for Johnny Dawkins, and that's not bad. As a matter of fact, that's not bad in a way that I feel like when you look at what last season was and the fact that he replaced everybody. Every starter was gone. And some big time guys here. Look at what Mustafa Cham is doing at Cincinnati. Keyshawn Hall is still every bit of a marquee scorer at the P4 level, and you got better. I thought this was a great job, and had they not lost to those last three in the regular season, I really thought he was headed toward I thought he was headed toward Big 12 Coach of the Year.
Yeah, and that momentum towards the end. And here's the thing about whether it be, placement for the dance or even those end-of-season awards, Mike, how you finish the season leaves the particular taste in the mouth of any voters or any committee people, and that in itself, it becomes problematic if you kind of back into what's going on. That never goes great. Obviously, 3 of the past 4 were losses, and in the eyes of many Knight fans out there, they barely got that one in those last 4 at the end against Cincinnati in that tournament game. So I'm not saying everybody should be excited, but the season that was compared to what was expected of UCF in the second best basketball league in the nation, according to Pete Yormark, the commissioner of the conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that you should be very happy about as a UCF fan long-term, right? I know a lot of people reference, Taco Fall in the other season where they did make the tournament. Though there were NBA guys on that roster. That did not happen here with this UCF team. And still, they got the 20 wins and the tournament bye for the conference tournament.
Yeah, look, 20 wins was an accomplishment. I really felt, I said this with our mutual friend, Andrew, 22 wins was the safe zone for me.
Yeah.
22 wins, we're not even having a discussion about whether you're making the tournament or not. 21 wins, you're right on that line. 20 wins, you leave a lot open for interpretation. But look, at the end of the day, I want to pose this question to you. Was this succeed? Was all things considered, having to replace all your starters, was this season a success for Johnny Dawkins, having reached that 20-win level?
Absolutely. Because again, this isn't allegedly this isn't a basketball school, but you're darn sure in a basketball conference, right? And here's the problem with success at the level that Johnny Dawkins has had it, despite all odds. And I know we'll probably get into this a little bit later, but despite all odds, UCF fans have become entitled quickly. This is a thing that happens. And again, I'm not knocking it. You don't spell fanatic without fan. I understand it. The same hope that they have in Scott Frost on the strength of one amazing season in his past. That was 9 years ago now. It's a whole other thing with the same kind of concept, though, with Johnny Dawkins having the success he did last year, and they're hoping to continue to build. The fans in general aren't worried necessarily if the entire cupboard becomes bare. If you have to refill fuel, you have to retool, and you have to at least be competitive in this conference, or else you aren't all that special. And I would even say that the out-of-conference schedule, there's something to be said for UCF in that matter as well. They have some non-con wins that are impressive. When other schools and other programs, or one could even argue UCF women's basketball as a program, bring in weaker non-cons to kind of lean into and get better to prepare for the second part of the season, that's not what Johnny Dawkins does. He gets his guys ready to fight. The exhibition game against Duke, all of it, he throws his dudes in the fire and they build quick so they can compete in the conference later on. But those wins should still count for something as well.
I agree. I agree completely. Look, I thought we saw a amazing display of coaching from Johnny Dawkins this season. And, what it resulted in was, I think what we saw is that he can coach. But I think what we also saw is that at the end of the day, you still need dogs, man. You still need a level of talent greater than or equal to the Arizonas that you're up against, because you cannot go into that undermanned and expect him to pull out wins versus Arizona. The talent always shows up at the ends of those games. I think that's what we saw when they faced off against them the 2 times this year. And they gave them all they wanted in that first matchup and just came up short because those guys just have too much talent.
And I'll even add this bit too, Mike. Johnny Dawkins has done it basically chasing his style, right? People talking about these past couple games, especially the Arizona loss in particular. Oh, well, they didn't shoot the 3 enough, so they lost. Hearing Drew Gluchov, again, our friend, on your most recent episode where you're previewing the Cincinnati game, talking about how defense is, 310th or something, on defense. That's not the Johnny Dawkins I started covering a few years ago. It's all defense all the time. And to have a style of basketball that's different, where they're concentrating more on offense versus defense, to have a different philosophy than I had seen in the years past, to see a coach pivot in such a fashion to find high success in the best conference in college basketball is certainly more proof of that this boy can coach 100%.
Yeah, look, Terry Mohajir was under a little bit of pressure this offseason to make a change there. Someone who's covered the program closely. Talk to me about that decision to stick with Johnny Dawkins as head coach here, and whether that maybe helped solidify him even a little bit, right? He was an AD under, I think, a little bit of fire after, Gus decides to, they came to a mutual parting of ways with Gus. And, you hire Scott Frost, and while it was popular in some circles, it was very unpopular in others. I'm
still a bit of a skeptic, I'll be honest.
Yeah. When was the last time this AD made a universally popular decision here? I would say making a decision to stick with Dawkins is one that he needs to pan out, right?
Yeah, 100%. And one could even argue that Johnny might be the best performing coach in the power conference era at UCF overall. And this past season is just another notch to put in that belt.
Yeah. Look, this is going to be a fun conversation to have this off season. Will our friend Terry Mohajir get it right? Sticking with Dawkins, a lot will be forgiven if that selection committee selects UCF to be in the NCAA tournament. We'll find that out on Sunday. The Big 12 tournament will conclude tomorrow. But until it does, there will be lots of debate over who should be in and who should be out. Look, let's get to the break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about whether UCF has truly done enough to be selected on Selection Sunday. We'll talk about that next, right here on Locked on UCF. This episode of Locked on UCF is brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade with Intuit TurboTax. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with real tax experts and get your documents uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. This episode of Locked on UCF is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. Rivalry games, ranked matchups. You can mix spreads, totals, even player props, which is something I love to do, to match to see how the slate is paying out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Has UCF done enough? This is a question that will rage on for the next 48 hours as of this recording. Have they done enough? And will they get selected here on Selection Sunday? UCF has won 20 games this season. Historically, what does it mean? Before we started recording, you and I talked about where these 20 wins fall in the pantheon of UCF basketball coaches. We have a graphic here for you guys. Torchy Clark had 7 20-win seasons from 1969 to 1983. Fun fact, I was born in 1983, so all those were before I was on this earth. Kirk Spira had 5 20-win seasons from 93 to 2010. He had a long tenure as UCF's coach. And then you've got Johnny Dawkins from 2016 to the present with 4 20-win seasons. However, he is the only one of these coaches with an actual tournament win. As a matter of fact, I think he's the only UCF head basketball coach in school history with a tournament win. Is that correct, Kyle?
Yeah, he is the only one to win a tournament. Spirall made a few appearances, but the only one with a win is over Virginia Commonwealth, the Rams with Johnny Dawkins, before that ever famous and awful, also disappointing Duke loss. And see, that's the thing that kind of plagues Dawkins and leaves the bad taste in the mouths of a lot of fans, is kind of like how the end seems to like kind of always be that climactic fall, so to speak. But yeah, he is the only one with a tournament win in UCF history. Correct.
That is that's wild. But back to the question of whether they've actually done enough. Is his 20 wins enough for UCF? The net rankings did not. I mean, they didn't hate UCF, but I would argue they didn't really love UCF. You go out on the road and you blow out BYU. I mean, they were up 30 in that game at one point, and you move from 46 in the net to 44 in the net. So, I mean, it didn't do much for you, and they were firmly a top 20 opponent in the net rankings. UCF now sits at 52 in the net. Baylor at 15 and 16 sits 1 spot ahead of UCF at 51 in the net. They are in no danger of making the NCAA tournament. But this is what I hate for UCF.
Yeah.
Right. They think that you have a net ranking lower than a team that is definitely not going to make the tournament. And that worries me for UCF.
And you're right. It's such a strange thing, you know, as much you would think that the whole concept of, the SEC schedule makes you stronger, which, hey, listen, I subscribe to on a regular basis, granted less now than back before when it comes to football. Why doesn't the Big 12 get that same respect in the rankings in basketball? I have no idea, Mikey J. Okay? I'm still working on that.
Okay, so hear me out.
Okay.
And this is a trend that I'm seeing. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a trend that I'm seeing.
This is an observation, not a criticism. I got you.
It seems like they are just despite lack of wins, they are rewarding teams that at least play a ton of quad one games. Baylor has played 16 quad one games, right? Another team I cover is 39 in the net, and they're one game above 500. That's Auburn. At 17-16, they just got put out of the SEC basketball tournament. They are now 4-13 in quad one. So they played 17 quad one games, and they seem to like that stat. So if you played a ton of those games, they say, hey, you know what? We respect that you at least played them. Now, when you look at UCF, they're 5-8 in quad one games. Now, mind you, at one point, I think both Auburn and Baylor had. Well, I can't speak for Baylor, but Auburn I know had more quad one wins. They had some of those quad one wins drop off as those teams like one were teetering between quad one and quad two.
Right.
But you're right. I think the Big 12 schedule should have given UCF more of a boost than it did. I agree, man. You played Kansas and you beat them, right? I mean, you own wins versus teams that are highly regarded in this net, right? You beat Texas Tech, right? I mean, you won those games.
The weight that it doesn't hold, despite, and listen, with no disrespect,
beat BYU.
Yeah.
In their house.
With no disrespect to our local bracketology expert, Drew Gluchov. Like, I know he'll have some sort of a retort. He's probably screaming at his computer screen about how silly I might sound to him, and that's okay. But where I come from, where I sit, I'm with you. I don't think the Big 12 gets that extra love. And a lot of the teams later on that were in maybe on that teetering edge in the Big 12 in the quad two ended up rising into quad one towards the end, right? So these are all elements of things that it's because of the momentum or lack thereof in UCF's case at the end of the year that really kind of shot them in the foot. I think it's more about the perception than the play.
Yeah, they had a 7-game losing streak that really killed their season in the end of last season. They avoided any such slide this year, but the timing of those 3 straight losses were really bad. And, you know, we on this show, we talked about it repeatedly about the 6-game stretch that we thought was pivotal, starting, with TCU. And they started that 6-game stretch with 3 straight wins, 2 of them on the road. And I thought, oh, man. This is crazy because 2 of the last 3 are at home. And then you lose to Baylor and you lose to Oklahoma State in overtime, and then you lose to West Virginia again. It's just frustrating to me. And I think that this is the case that it's going to be made against you when you're teetering in the net in that zone where you could be in or you could be out, and then you go and you lose 3 straight games. I'm of the opinion that nothing that happens in these conference tournaments matters unless you win it all. Like I think that you're in or out before. I think you are what your regular season says you are in the committee's mind.
I think there's a lot of weight to that, Mike, but let me add this. Let me put my tinfoil hat on. Okay. Here's where I think it's at. If somehow UCF was in a position to where they didn't have the tournament bye, and they were in a position to win 2 tournament games before facing the fate they did against Arizona, I think that perception, they won 2 tournament games when they're this close, could put them in a position to where they had the right kind of mentality and the committee sneaks them in. I'm intimating that the first round bye may have actually hurt them. Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, you know what? I will say this: difference between this year and last year, and previous years, this is a really soft bubble. I mean, the bubble is very, very soft this year, and so the Big 12, unlike the SEC and some other conferences, ending your conference tournament on Saturday weighs in your favor because they're doing a lot of work right now to decide which teams are in or out. And so if you can get your conference tournament done while other teams are still playing, I think it weighs in your team's, your members' favor. So, it may sound like a crazy amount of logistics, but I'm telling you, it matters, right? They're deciding right now who's in and who's out, right? And
what I hear is the same advantage that Notre Dame enjoys in football on a regular basis. That's what I'm hearing you say. It's that same kind of concept.
Yeah. This is crazy. But we have to answer the question before we move on. In your mind, has UCF done enough?
I absolutely think so. It's out of, and now granted, like you said, we're both intimating that a 22nd win, because if they didn't have that first bye and they got this far, that's 22 as well. We're both landing on that same number, Mike. But that being said, I think they should be in. They've done enough. They just had a bad finish. And at the very least, to see the work that was done by this program to this point, I know they have some light injuries. Everybody does. That's fine. But at the end of the day, I think they've done enough. Yeah, especially with a 20-win season with this group. Absolutely.
My next statement is probably going to make some people upset, Kyle.
Uh-oh.
But I've been listening to the tone around this selection. I'm telling you right now, Auburn's going to make this tournament. And one of the arguments being made for them is that their win on the road at Florida is the best road win in the country. That's what a lot of people are saying. And so when you're for a team that's really on the bubble, the thing that might push them over is that win. Hear me when I say that. I want to make sure that people understand what I'm saying. UCF going out to BYU and 30 burgering them on the road is just as good a win as Auburn at Florida.
That's a big statement, Mike.
Come on, man. Dude, you went into their house and you not only beat them, you never gave them hope. You never gave them hope. And I mean, on any given Sunday, Saturday, Monday, we will play basketball every day of the week. This UCF team can beat you.
Yeah,
it's always just been a question of which team is going to show up on what day. And they've been very hard to predict. I did not think they would beat BYU. I predicted that they would lose that game, and they shocked the hell out of me and everybody else in the country. I think if they get in this tournament, they're going to give us more of those moments. And that's what you want.
On the board.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to say something silly to join you. Nobody thought they would do what they did even in the Crown tournament. And if Darius Johnson doesn't get hurt, maybe they win that and surprise people too. They've done it before, just not on a place where UCF fans would prefer to see it and not as many people watch it because it's not the big dance, which I get.
Yeah. Look, this is going to be a fun. I mean, we might have to record another one tomorrow just to, get through all our thoughts on why UCF should be in this tournament. But for Johnny Dawkins' sake and for Terrio Mohajir's sake, I certainly hope that they are in. I think they did a fantastic job with this program, given what they had to work with. Speaking of what they had to work with, let's get to our next segment where we will talk about whether Johnny Dawkins is off the hot seat. Should he even have been on it? And what does it look like moving forward with or without him? We'll talk about that next right here on Locked on UCF. This episode of Locked on UCF is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that we've been talking, companies just like yours hired 27 people on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this show right here on Locked on UCF. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. This episode of Locked on UCF is also brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Guys, welcome to the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft with 18 flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, and Cotton Candy. There's something for everyone. I don't know about you guys, but I think Confetti Craze is going to be at the top of my 5-hour energy flavor draft. So get your number one pick in today. Find your new flavor of 5-hour energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. That's 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. UCF fans, we've got a job for you. We want you to head on over to lockedonucf.supercast.com and get signed up for the UCF Everydayers Club. That's the UCF Everydayers Club. As an everydayer, you get access to a ad-free feed of the show. You get a Discord where you can converse with other UCF fans just like yourself. And for the month of March, we've got a special going. That's right. We've got a special going that you don't want to miss. You can use code March to get your first month free. Head to lockedonucf.supercast.com to get and use code March to get your first month free and become a UCF Everydayer. That's ad-free content. That's a private Discord chat. And that's a great way to support our show. So if you love the work that we're doing here, you can help support this work by joining up as an everydayer. Once that month expires, it's only $5, guys. It's only $5 a month to help support your favorite UCF content. That's lockedonucf.supercast.com to get signed up today. We appreciate your support. To close the show, is Dawkins off the hot seat? Has he done enough? We got a graphic here, I think, that will help us contextualize this conversation. But I think that we did a segment. Andrew and I did a segment earlier in the year about NIL and where UCF is at in NIL, and the university gave us a statement directly here at Locked On UCF because they want to be clear. They are fully funded to the 20.6, right? We know that 2.5 or 2.6 of that is scholarships for the Olympic sports. And so that leaves about $18 million for NIL strictly to be split amongst, or divvied up however the universities decide. At the top of this of college athletics, for the schools at the top of college athletics, the spend is greater than 20.6. You and I know that, right? However, they're choosing to funnel that money through to the programs. They're going to do it because the NCAA has not proved they can enforce. They don't have enforcement power on the private businesses. Yeah, right. And so if I'm Georgia, if I'm Alabama, if I'm Ohio State, if I'm Texas, I'm spending. I am spending. Almost every SEC school, I'm spending until they prove they can stop it. Texas Tech said, you know what? We'll just front load a bunch of deals before the rules go into place. And they dropped $30 million. Their billionaire, Cody, what's his name today? Here's $30 million. Go get the roster that you want. Playoffs.
For those who are wondering how UCF lost Lee Hunter, for example.
You need dogs. You need dogs to compete, man. That's just it. You can coach them up. We can talk about development and we can say all these things and talk about being a team guy and culture. At the end of the day, you need dogs, and that costs money in today's college football. That's it. That is the game. And so what game is UCF playing, right? Because I didn't want to get off on too much up on a tangent, but we're dealing with, is Dawkins off the hot seat? But I don't think we can talk about that without talking about the resources that he has to work with and relative to the schools that he's expected to beat.
For that very reason, Mike, and to speak to this graphic perfectly, you ask if Johnny Dawkins is off the hot seat. Mike, he's never been on it. Now, sure, the fans may shout, fire Johnny, but that's because they don't know all of the details. And you're mentioning a lot of them right here, Ben. For what Johnny Dawkins has done, there are players he faces against that are on or near his salary. Not mentioning any particular names, but there's a certain former UCF center that's not a UCF center anymore that, let's just put it this way. Not with the team anymore, still probably making allegedly close to what Johnny currently does for this particular right? And
Wow.
that in it of itself makes your point completely. You have the graphic here where the guy at the top of the conference is literally making more than on or around 4 times as much. And listen, I'm not mad that Kelvin Sampson is necessarily making more than twice what Johnny Dawkins does. I think Kelvin Sampson's an excellent coach in his own right. Do I think Johnny Dawkins is doing a job that should maybe match his salary? Sure. If the only measuring stick is whether or not you make the tournament, then you're not going to ever make a tournament because you're not going to pay the right coach.
Kyle, let me, just for our listeners on audio, because they can't see the graphic, but this is the Big 12 men's basketball coaching salaries for this year. Bill Self is number 1 at $8.8 million. Scott Drew at Baylor is $5.4 million at number 2. Number 3, Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, $5.3 million. Kelvin Sampson at Houston, $4.6 million. And then you have a slew of coaches at Texas Tech, Kansas, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Colorado, Oklahoma State, somewhere between $2.3 and $4 million. And then you've got Johnny Dawkins there in that second tier at $2.1 million. So did they get $2.1 million worth of results?
If you look at the numbers, they came in way under that worth, right? $1 million a win. What's so special about that? Yeah, okay. That's not the math that's right there, right? Because I just realized I did the math wrong when I said it, right? It's 20 wins, $2 million. That's way under what you're expected to pay compared to what you have everywhere else there. And with UCF's approach, listen, I've heard it from people close to the program that they are insistent on keeping things out of debt in the black. And that in itself has protected a lot of coaches who may not normally have been kept in other situations, right? And Johnny Dawkins in particular, one could argue he's the best. Not firing him, but retaining him might be the best coaching decision that Terry Mohajir's made in his tenure, period, point blank. So with all that in mind, and by the way, I mentioned not being in debt. You might think about another blue blood school up the road there in Florida in the ACC, in FSU, that's actually talking about allegedly being bankrupt in their athletics department. That's something that they're definitely trying to prevent from having happen.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy money game here. I think bang for buck this season, he outperformed his salary.
Mm-hmm.
He had to dump his entire roster, and he got you in the conversation. I mean, there were games that they lost that they probably shouldn't have lost, but there were games that they won that they had no business winning.
So they certainly weren't favored.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that went both ways here. And then if you're Dawkins, if you want consistency, I need the resources to go out and get the players that I want. Now, why do I say this? Well, you talk about a certain athletic department being bankrupt. What I think most college fans don't understand is that most athletic departments, and when I say most, I mean I really do mean most, like almost 98% of them operate in the red.
Correct.
They don't make money, right? And without football, the Olympic sports could not even exist. There are a few, like I think maybe like Alabama, Texas, maybe in the black in their athletic departments in terms of what they spend versus what they bring in every single year. So football makes money, but the athletic department as a whole, almost every other sport costs.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be like 2 programs in basketball programs in the whole country that turn a profit. It is a zero-sum game for every other sport other than football. So I want people to understand why this conversation is important about the resources that a coach has versus the expectation versus the resources that his peers have, and what's expected year in and year out. If you want consistency, you need spend. That was it. Before, a lot of that money went into the coaches because it was illegal to pay the players. So everybody saved their money for facilities, and all the connective pieces, right? When we bring a recruit on campus, we got to have the nicest weight rooms and lounges and player-only facilities and all this stuff to attract them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's beyond that. Now you have to put a lot of that money directly into their pockets, and still you're expected to have all that other stuff.
And now you're asked to do it overtly as well. Now, granted, there are alleged rules and things, but we've all heard the stories about the donors, shall we call them, instead of boosters, right? That are slipping into players' DMs on the regular, with the recruiting proposition, shall we say? This is what coaches mean. This is what people mean when they say there need to be guardrails in place. And to the point you made earlier, Mike, there's no reliable way to govern it, to enforce it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that it's clear from the conversations I've had and the conversations that you've had that UCF is wanting to do this the right way, what they think is the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's abiding by the rules, not just the letter, but the spirit of what the rules are supposed to be. There are those that will argue that that's not, like, again, the schools that you're competing with in football and basketball are going to
disagree. That's right.
Yeah, they're going to do what they want to do until you prove you can stop them from doing it. What they've lacked is they've lacked enforcement teeth for a very, very long time, and the needle has moved. Right. One of the big conversations headed into the season was about how third-party collectives would be classified. Yeah. Would they be considered an extension of the university, and do those deals count toward your cap? And a lot of schools bet that they would be, and then they ended up, I think, just saying like, no, they're not. And it's like, oh man, can we get this right? We just wasted all off season abiding by a rule, and then you move the needle in favor of the people who just acted like it didn't exist to begin with.
Right.
So, you need like 20.6 is not the real number that you need. The real number in my mind is somewhere around, if you take all the sports into account, is somewhere around 40 that you're putting into athletes' pockets. And then you're still expected to provide top-notch facilities and all the other, like I said, connective things. You
didn't even mention top-level coaching at that point, too.
Correct. Yeah.
That same market,
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm telling you, dude, this is getting to be an expensive sport here. And
meanwhile, the TV networks that are expected to finance it all with their contracts are hemorrhaging money themselves in some place. When does the bubble burst, Mike?
Yeah. Look. Final thoughts here before we get out of here, Kyle, on where UCF is at. Does it, if Selection Sunday rolls around and they say, UCF, you're dancing, what will that mean? What will that mean to not just Johnny Dawkins and his basketball team, but to the university?
I mean, and obviously over and above me making fun of the Fire Johnny crew, right? No, it's huge for their history, man. What this does, like you saw the other coaches on that graphic, he's not going to be at Torchy Clark level yet, but he's going to be at a place where he has as many appearances as Spearall, and he's doing it in a power conference era against the best conference in the country without NBA players on his roster. Name me more qualifiers for the awesome here. Johnny Dawkins has already got a UCF Hall of Fame case if he were to retire tomorrow, and he's not. The same sources I mentioned earlier, they're not trying to get rid of him anytime soon, especially if he makes the dance. They're definitely going to talk extension at that point, and perhaps the gap will be closed some. I don't think they're going to give him $4 to $8 million, but you're going to definitely reward him for the work he's done, especially having to keep going back to the grocery store to refill the proverbial grocery store to refill the cupboard. I don't want to insinuate he's buying the players' food because, that's allegedly illegal, right? Mm-hmm. So with all that in mind, this is huge to show what UCF can do with more, or rather with less, to produce more. Now, if they could do it in football, that would be icing on the cake. But one problem at a time, Mike.
Yeah, well, look, spring practice is just around the corner, so you and I will do some deep dives there for sure. Kyle Nash, I want to thank you for joining me on today's show. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Of course, man. Yeah, always fun to do this with you, Mike. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the SOTG, the student of the game on Facebook. Until next time, my friend, class dismissed.
That's it for another great edition of Locked On UCF. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day and for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. We're out of here, guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On UCF.